Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for craftworld.eldar.com. I'm Brent, and this video is going to be short, but I feel like I should talk about a relatively significant, actually hugely significant, both lore update and also rules update that is thinly hidden in a article that appeared on the Warhammer community site yesterday called "Who Are the Phoenix Lords? The Legendary Aeldari Heroes Explained," which looks initially like just a fluff piece in which they tell you almost nothing new about the Phoenix Lords that we know about, and instead just shower us with powerful sounding adjectives as a marketing gimmick in advance of the release of a bunch of new models. But if you plow through the marketing material, there are a couple of really significant details. The most significant, the biggest news, as already spoiled by the title of this video, is that Karandras is gone. Everybody's favorite galactic Karen will no longer be sneaking into Imperial department stores in that killer green outfit and demanding to see the manager angrily. The Karen is out. Most of us speculated that the model didn't get an update because they were planning to release the new model as part of some later range update, maybe in some kind of box set or something late this year. But no, we are not going to have rules in the Codex for Karandras. Karandras has been written out. After going on for a bit about how each of the current Phoenix Lords that we do have models for is so awesome, and talking about how Lycus has been reborn, the Warp Spider Phoenix Lord, we are reminded that the Shining Spear Phoenix Lord is missing, and we're told also that Aerilith is also now missing. So there also will be no Aerilith in the Codex. We kind of knew that. I had given up on the notion that Shadow Specters or the Shadow Spectre Phoenix Lord were going to have any rules post-Codex drop. I figured that they would go to Legends. I think most of us did. If this is a shock to you, that's a blow too. They're cool. They're cool models. It's a neat concept. I played with my Shadow Specters a great deal in 8th edition and 9th edition. In the first months of 10th edition, I always had a unit of them. But then further being told that Karandras is not missing like these others. Karandras, we're told, is absent, whatever that means. And his storyline is expanded to suggest that sometimes Karandras will hunt his target or his prey for centuries, which I'm pretty sure is a new addition. I don't know that that was sometimes true of the Karen before. I think that maybe that's a twist. But in any event, there aren't going to be rules. There's no data card. We're probably not getting any Karandras model in 10th edition. Now, it's not, you could argue it's not really a loss. It's a trade. I mean, Lycus is incredibly cool. The Warp Spider Phoenix Lord, not only is that model by any reasonable measure just unbelievably objectively awesome, but probably will also have fearsomely good rules on the tabletop. It looks like it's going to have very good shooting, possibly really good melee. It has a really interesting dedicated melee weapon. It's been suggested that all of the Phoenix Lords will both be good at shooting and at melee. What will set Lycus apart is Lycus will have the mobility to actually make use of those advantages. And given that that's the case, Lycus may very well be the most powerful of them in terms of gameplay. And again, the model is just fabulous, and that's great. But I do think Karandras is a loss. I liked the vibe of Karandras. I liked the lore, and I don't know. We've been playing with that model for 30 years. At this point, I think it might have been the oldest model in the game, and so it's a little bit of a bummer to see it go without a replacement. Certainly in the first part of the index part of 10th edition, right? The most competitive Phoenix Lord was probably Fugan, but then the number 2 was definitely Karandras. Karandras was showing up on podiums at GTs. There are ways to really soup up the damage output of striking Scorpions and make them hit way above their pay grade. I certainly, in the late index 10th, I really enjoyed my Karen. So I'm sorry to see the Karen go. I really am. But GW also smacked us down a little bit at the end of the article in kind of I think a funny way. They say that like it's prophesied that at the Ranadandra, the end times, when all of the Eldar die and there are no more craft worlds anymore and this whole plot line ends, then all of the Phoenix Lords will reemerge. Read between the lines. If we ever give you all the Phoenix Lord models, that means we're ending your whole storyline and Eldar will all die and be replaced with some other version of elves. And I just desperately do not want that to happen. Not at all. So good job, GW. You did it. You cowed me. And it even says like, so maybe Karandras' absence is a good thing because we would just be that much closer to the end of everything if we were one more Phoenix Lord up and no Phoenix Lords down. And that would definitely be the saddest day in my 40K career. So I guess it's fine. We're getting a lot of really cool stuff. I'm super excited about the Codex drop and really psyched about all the reveals and the new rules. So if that costs Karen, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. Okay. But nevertheless, it's big news. Two other lesser lore updates aside from the disappearance of Aerilith and the absence of Karandras. The other most significant one is that we're told that Jane Zar, the Howling Banshee Phoenix Lord, is no longer a fierce advocate of Yvraine. In fact, she's distanced herself from Yvraine. She's not comfortable with the sheer number of elves that Yvraine is calling on to die in favor of the cause. Now, here's how I read this. Narratively, this makes absolutely no sense to me because from the beginning, Yvraine's whole ideology has been pretty much all of the elves need to die. Like what we're doing is we're all going to die to trigger the thing to then save all the elves. So for Jane Zar to be like, yes, I agree with her. We better do the thing. All the elves need to die. And then being like, well, I didn't know she wanted all the elves to die. I don't think narratively that makes much sense. So my best guess is what happened is they wrote some rules for the Ynnari detachment, which we're going to see in just under 2 weeks, that say that the Ynnari can't use, if you're running the Ynnari detachment, the Avatar of Cain or any of the Phoenix Lords, which is what the rule has been previously. But previously, that has been the rule, while the lore has been, yes, Yvraine is, or Jane Zar is one of Yvraine's fiercest supporters, and people have sort of scratched their heads. There was also a period of time where Yvraine couldn't run with Corsairs, and it was like, in the lore, she's flying around on a Corsair ship, and her fiercest advocate is Jane Zar, but she's not allowed to, on the table, to have any Corsairs around, and Jane Zar certainly won't fight with her on the table. Like, it made absolutely no sense. So I suspect this is actually just an attempt to bring the lore in line with the rules, even though it just, from a narrative perspective, it doesn't feel credible. I'm sure that a very good fiction writer, given the opportunity to tease out the details in a narrative, could absolutely come up with some workaround here. But just as exposition in a Warhammer community article, it feels sort of hollow and weird and pulpy. But historically, Ynnari have not been able to use the Phoenix Lords. So I guess it makes sense. And then lastly, there's a note in the beginning of the article. It's kind of a throwaway line. Nobody knows how many aspect shrines exist. And this is not actually new. It's a reiteration of a claim that was made in the very first Aeldari Codex, the second edition of the Aeldari Codex, and I think also in the White Dwarf magazine that really kicked off Craftworld Eldar in the very early 90s. That was kind of the first codex. I'm not sure, though, if in the last few editions, and I could be wrong, someone out there is going to correct me, but in the last few editions, I'm not sure that GW has actually reiterated the claim that there are so many different aspect shrines that we just don't even know how many there are. Like, nobody knows because there are just so many. The ones that we're familiar with, that we see on the tabletop, are the ones that exist everywhere in every craft world. Every craft world has Howling Banshees. Even though Ibersil has the most. Every craft world has Dark Reapers, even though Altensair has the most, and so on. But there are some aspect shrines that only exist on particular craft worlds and are less common, and presumably they did this so they could leave themselves an opening later on to introduce new aspect warriors. And the only time this has happened since the Second Ed Codex, when they introduced warp spiders, has been when they brought out Shadow Specters as a Forge World model. And it looks like they're shelving those. But nevertheless, it seems like they're leaving the lore door open. I just like this kind of thing. One of my favorite things about 40K as an IP is all of the gaps and the holes, and the fact that they generally don't advance the storyline, or advance it so slowly that it leaves endless possibility. Like, anytime they advance the storyline in a way that narrows it, that like says, yes, there was all of this possibility and now there's no possibility this one thing is definitely true, I kind of think it makes the setting just a little bit less interesting every time that happens. So I really like this kind of thing. I don't need them to give us a new aspect shrine next year or something. I just think it's cool knowing that they're out there. I think that's neat. And that's what I've got on a very small lore update that nevertheless has potentially pretty big consequences in terms of, the disappearance of a beloved and much used character and data sheet, and also, of course, Aeldari and the Shadow Specters, presumably. Okay, if you have your own ideas about anything in that article, feel free to share them below. Or if you just want to say hey and help out the algorithm, I always like that. If you want to talk about this stuff and theorize about it over on the Discord with me and with my followers, you could become a patron. I'll link that in the description below. And many thanks, as always, to my patrons and Constantine the Magnet Baron and all of you for listening. I'm so excited to get my hands on the Codex so soon and review that for you. Thanks, everyone. Take care.